Good morning, students. Today I am going to discuss a topic which is from semester 3, paper code Zoo RC 3016. The name of the paper is Physiology and Biochemistry. So here under Unit 6, Reproduction and Endocrine Glands, we have a topic, very important topic, that is physiology of female reproduction and hormonal control of menstrual cycle. So that we are going to discuss today in this class. The female reproductive system in humans basically consists of these parts. First of all, they have paired ovaries, then accessory ducts. Under accessory ducts, we have two fallopian tubes, which are also known as the oviducts, and uterus and the external genitalia. So all these things collectively compose the female reproductive system. So the paired ovaries, as we know, these are the primary sex reproductive organs in females, and they have two ovaries on the right and left side of the body, and the main hormones that are secreted by these ovaries are estrogen and progesterone, which are very important for the development of female secondary sexual characters as well as the development of the fetus. Now then this ovary contains number of follicles which undergoes a periodic cycle which is called as the menstrual cycle, and that also leads to the formation of ovum, which is known as the female gamete. So in accessory ducts, we can see we have a fallopian tube this side. This is the left fallopian tube, and the fallopian tube consists of the isthmus, the ampulla, and the infundibulum. And similarly, on the right hand side also there is a fallopian tube, and the fallopian tube is connected to the ovary with the help of ligaments. So this particular the fallopian tube that we are talking about are approximately 10 to 12 centimeter long, and as I said, it has three parts: isthmus, ampulla, and the infundibulum. And yeah. Now the uterus actually it is a pear shaped organ. This is supported by the ligaments in the pelvic wall, and it has got three parts. The uterus, it has got the upper part is called as the fundus, then the middle body, and the terminal part is called as the cervix. And then this particular uterus, it is divided into three layers. The first layer, you can see the external layer, which is a thin membrane, which is called as the perimetrium. Then the middle layer, it is called as the myometrium, and the innermost layer, that is called as the endometrium. So uterus actually contains three layers: the perimetrium, the myometrium, and the endometrium. Then the process of gametogenesis, which is very important both in the male reproductive system as well as in the female reproductive system. And in the male reproductive system, the gametogenesis, we call it as the spermatogenesis, which is the production of the male gamete, and in female it is called as oogenesis, that is the production of the female gamete. So in oogenesis, what happens? The primary follicle, it undergoes certain stages of development and finally forms a matured follicle, and under the matured follicle, which is also called as the Graafian follicle, the ovum develops and reaches full maturity until it is ruptured from the ovarian wall during the time of ovulation. So it is a very, very important process in the female reproductive system. And the primary oocyte gets surrounded by the primary oocyte, if we say that, which is inside the primary follicle, that is called as the primary oocyte. it is surrounded by the layer of cells. This layer of cells are called as the granulosa cells, and the primary oocyte surrounded by the granulosa cells forms the primary follicle, and this primary follicle will continue its development to reach the secondary follicle, and later on to the tertiary follicle stage, and finally it reaches the Graafian follicle stage, which is the matured follicle stage, until it is being ruptured. And here it is mentioned that many primary follicles that degenerate during the phase from birth to puberty, and therefore at puberty only 60 to 80,000 primary follicles are left in each ovary. So these are the different structural changes that is taking place from primary follicle stage to the secondary follicle stage, tertiary follicle stage, and then Graafian follicle stage. So that is the final stage of the development of the ovum, which is called as the Graafian follicle, or we can say it as a matured follicle. So this is the finally the secondary oocyte, which is going to get develop into the ovum. Yeah, now let us see the process of oogenesis in female reproductive system. So primarily the first germ mother cells, that is the oogonia, they are actually the diploid cells. They have got 46 number of chromosomes, and the chromosome number, it is also represented as 2n because it is diploid cell. And these oogonia, they will undergo the mitosis division. So as we know that in mitosis cell division, the chromosome number remains the same. So in the first cell division that is taking place in the process of oogenesis, the oogonia develops into the primary oocyte, but the chromosome number, you can see here, it remains the same, 2n, 2n, because in mitosis the chromosome number does not change. So now these primary oocytes, they will grow in size and will result into the slightly develop as compared to the initial primary oocyte. This will be slightly bigger. So they will now undergo the meiosis 1. So in meiosis 1, what happens? The chromosome number reduces to half. As we know that meiosis 1 is the reduction division. So this primary oocyte will get divided into some secondary oocytes, and the number of chromosome here will reduce to half, from 2n to n. So during the process of cell division from primary oocyte to secondary oocyte, one secondary oocyte is formed and one first polar body is formed. This first polar body, actually the function of this first polar body is yet unknown to science. Then these secondary oocytes will undergo meiosis 2 cell division, and in meiosis 2 the chromosome number does not change and the chromosome number remains the same, n. So that is the oocyte, and it will also result into the formation of one second polar body. So at the end of oogenesis, we see that we have a oocyte and a second polar body. Okay. Now let us see the process of menstrual cycle in female reproductive system. So this is a cycle which repeats every 28 to 29 days in the females of humans, and this cycle is also seen in the non-human primates. So in primates and non-human primates, this reproductive cycle is called as the menstrual cycle, whereas in other mammals, this is known as the estrous cycle. It is quite different from the menstrual cycle. So in menstrual cycle, there are actually two different type of events taking place simultaneously. One in the ovary, which is called as the ovarian cycle. So changes is seen in the ovary, and in the uterus, which is called as the uterine cycle, where we see changes in the uterus. So this is the pictorial depiction of the menstrual cycle. We can see here the entire cycle is divided into four stages. The first one is the menstrual stage, which lasts from the first day to the fifth day. So there may be 1 or 2 days, variation in depending on the physiology of the individual. So average it is 1 to 5th day, and after menstrual phase, the second phase is the follicular phase. This is also called as the proliferative phase. It lasts from the 5th day to the 13th day, and the ovulatory phase, which lasts on the 14th day, exactly on the 14th day, and the last phase is the secretory phase or the luteal phase. So the menstrual phase is characterized by menstrual flow. That is due to the breaking down of the endometrium lining. So that results into bleeding for some 3 to 5 days, and then this happens due to the breaking down of the uterine membrane, that is the endometrium lining. So that is called as the menstrual phase. Then on 5th to 13th day, that is called as the what is called the follicular phase or proliferative phase. So during this phase, the follicle starts to develop inside the ovary. The follicular development will take place from primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and so on. So then comes the this is continuing follicular phase, and next phase will be the ovulatory phase, where there will be rupture of the Graafian follicle and release of the secondary oocyte. So that is called as ovulation. After that, we have the secretory phase or the luteal phase, during which the remaining part of the Graafian follicle will transform into a structure which is called as the corpus luteum. This corpus luteum will start synthesizing a very important hormone which is called as the progesterone. So this progesterone will help in the maintenance of endometrium if there is a case of pregnancy. So then the secretory phase, there will be secretion of some hormones like FSH. Okay, the same thing is repeating. Now this is very important. This is the pictorial depiction of the graphical representation of the menstrual cycle. Here we can see from this diagram the 4 stages: menstrual phase, follicular phase, luteal phase, and the beginning of the next cycle. And in this diagram we are trying to show the uterine events, the ovarian hormone levels, the ovarian events, and the pituitary hormone levels. So we can see at the beginning, from day 1 to day 3rd or day 5th, during this time there is menstrual flow. So at that time the endometrium lining is very thin, and gradually after that, in the follicular phase, the endometrial lining starts developing, and during this time the secretion of estrogen hormone is also very high, and in the pituitary gland the synthesis of luteinizing hormone and follicle hormone also increases. So this results into the development of the development of the follicles, the ovarian follicles, and on the 14th day there is the ovulation. During this time the estrogen hormone reaches its peak. So after that, this remaining part of the Graafian follicle transform into the corpus luteum, and the corpus luteum started synthesizing the progesterone hormone, and you can see the secretion of progesterone hormone is increased and it reaches the peak. And during that time the endometrium lining is highly developed, and if there is no pregnancy, then it will result into the beginning of the second menstrual cycle immediately around 28 or 29 days. So this is the menstrual cycle in a nutshell. So this menarche is a stage where they are not in the menstrual cycle, so they are not yet, they have reached the puberty. So this is called menarche. Then from 12 to 50 they have this menstrual cycle, and by the time they reach the 50 years age, so they reach the menopausal stage where no menstrual cycle takes place. So with this I conclude my topic today. Thank you all for your pleasant listening. Thank you.